Welcome to episode 134 of the Lone Hockey Podcast. For today, we're going to be talking about some standouts between Colorado and Philadelphia from last night. And Colorado had a really good game, and it was pretty much dominated from the start by Cale Makar. And I think the thing is when you notice Cale Makar moving his feet and when he's able to get to the middle of the ice inside the offensive zone and use his shot, I feel like that's when you see Cale Makar at his best, and he was just rolling. And he, I believe he had 2 goals in this game, almost had a hat trick. Yeah, 2 goals in this game, and one of them got called off, so he would have had a hat trick if that didn't happen. So we'll start with the Avalanche side. We'll start with Makar. I felt like he was dominating possession for the entirety of the game. I noticed him everywhere inside the offensive zone. He was moving, he was activating, he was a threat downhill, he was a threat in space, he was a threat moving laterally in the line and also moving inside the faceoff circles moving laterally. So a guy who, when he's at his best, he plays in the interior of the space inside the offensive zone and really controls that area. And he's a guy who's really able to execute in those areas very well and very consistently. And obviously a play driver in this team, obviously one of the key components to this team. And it's essentially like watching two Nathan McKinnons. You have a Nathan McKinnon up front, you have a Nathan McKinnon on the back end in Cale Makar. And it's kind of funny how that works out. But with the Avalanche, especially in their power play, because Philly took a lot of power plays, a lot of undisciplined power play or undisciplined penalties yesterday, and they cost them in some ways. And Kolosov wasn't getting some of the help, and some of the goals that he gave up, they were screened, so he wasn't able to see them too well. And obviously, Kolosov's still trying to adapt to the league as a goaltender for the Flyers, and at the same time, there were some times where his D coverage wasn't necessarily the best in terms of being able to allow him to see pucks and be able to scan through traffic. Sometimes he'd have to look around the pressure to see where the puck was coming from or see where the play was. And so Colorado was able to take advantage of that. They did a really good job screening Kolosov, screening the D for Philly, and being able to do a consistent job of that, not only on the power play, but 5-on-5 as well. I noticed it a lot, and they were doing an excellent job controlling possession for the majority of this game. Casey Middlestat has been a seamless fit with Colorado thus far. He had a multi-point game, a goal and an assist. Just a guy who fits this style of system really well. Like I said before, he has speed on his wings too, and that also helps because it allows him to make plays and execute plays faster in comparison to when he was in Buffalo, where sometimes his wingers like to slow down. That would in turn cause him to slow down and make plays a little bit delayed. And so I feel like with Middlestat in Colorado, having that tempo in the system allows him to make plays faster and make decisions faster with the puck and a stick, and it's allowed him to be able to control play a little bit better and be able to control the middle of the ice a little bit better as well. Mikko Rantanen looked really good as a power winger throughout this game. 2 assists, 4 shots. A guy who controls the walls, controls the perimeter of the ice. A guy who can really control space and leverage his strength, and a guy who is really hard to knock out the puck. And he brings an all-around package that is very hard to find in a winger, and a guy who plays that position so well and has just matured so well in that position over the course of time. And ever since being drafted by Colorado, it's just continued to get better and better and better. And so with Ranson, he stands out, not necessarily for the speed element. I would notice him more for the puck protection, the body orientation, and the ability to hold off contact. He's really good at using his free hand to negate the stick impact of the defenseman. So he can use that free hand to hold off the body of the defenseman, also hold off the stick of them. And this allows him to be able to control space a little bit better and also maintain control of the puck a little bit easier. And Jonathan Drouin, another player that stood out, has done a really good job ever since joining Colorado and has been a really great fit for them. Obviously, there's a connection with McKinnon, but at the same time, individually for his own career, he needed some sort of rejuvenation. I feel like in Colorado, he's slightly gotten that now. And for him being able to get that, for him being able to get that consistent ice time has allowed him to be able to control play a little bit more like the Jonathan Drouin we saw to start his career. And that was the highly touted Jonathan Drouin at the time. And a guy who's really controlled as a playmaker. And I've noticed over the course of time, his decision making in the league has actually matured a little bit. I would say he he plays with a lot of risk in his game, and that's the thing. As an offensive player, you have to play with some degree of risk to generate points. But at the same time, I've noticed his decision making has improved where he's not forcing plays as often. I noticed earlier in his career he'd force plays a little bit too much. He tried dangle through guys a little bit too much. I don't notice as much of that now. I feel like some of that has to do with him trying to sort of make a name for himself for the second time and for the second go around. But at the same time, his decision making has allowed him to control space. He's been much more mature in how he's able to handle the puck and how he's able to pass off and delegate to his teammates. I feel like that's been a really good attribute in his game that's been really noticeable. And especially early on in his career, because he was a highly touted draft pick, he was a highly touted prospect. He was more noticeable as a goal scorer at the time, but I feel like he's really evolved into more of a playmaker as his career has continued to grow over the course of time. Devontae's had a really good game yesterday as well. Just moves well. He's a two-way transitional defenseman. He defends transition defense scenarios really well, but also plays engaged in transition offense. So he plays both ways. He's very active both ways, and a guy who is very relied upon with Cale Makar in that top pairing has been a really great fit ever since joining the Avs and has been really fun to watch. He's really underrated because of his angling skill, his attention to detail on rushes against, his ability to log huge ice time. He's averaging around 25, 30-ish minutes a game. Just plays with that consistency and is a real big driver to the Avalanche team. And you obviously hear about Makar as their number one defenseman, but he's a really good complementary number two right behind Makar and has just continued to grow and just the modern elements in his game. I've noticed ever since he was in New York where he always had the angling skill, the attention to detail in his rushes against how he's able to cut guys off, how he's able to cut ice in half, how he's able to arc his routes so that way he can get around the puck and also be able to control space a little bit easier defensively. And he's very controlled with his route timing and how he's able to close gaps. And I feel like that's a big attribute to his game. His defensive game is a big attribute into his own success, and that allows him to be able to not only control space, but be able to be an efficient defensive player. And it's really good to see. It's really noticeable to see. And then on Philly's side, we'll start with Michkov again, Matvey Michkov. I feel like I noticed him generating a lot of chances, and he wasn't getting a lot of help in this game. And I actually noticed him creating a lot individually, which is really good to see, considering the fact that that ability to take control of space, take control of the neutral zone is sometimes a little bit difficult for a player, especially a rookie coming into the league. And with Michkov, I feel like over the course of time, it's been around 20 games or so that he's played, and he's looked way more comfortable transitioning the puck. He's looked way more comfortable extending possession in the ozone. That's really good to see, especially this early on. And I would imagine over the course of the season, we could see some improvement in not only his neutral zone play, but his ozone play and his ability to control the space along the perimeter. And he's just continued to get better game in, game out. And I feel like some of this has to do with the scratch that ever since he was scratched, he looks a little bit more competitive. He looks a little more feisty. He looks a little bit more driven to get to loose pucks. So I feel like in some ways the scratch definitely helped him be a little bit more competitive, but at the same time he's just improved. And that's the bottom line when it comes to that. And then Bobby Brink had a really good game, a guy who has dramatically improved his skating over the course of time ever since being drafted out of the USHL, and then going to Denver and lighting it up there, and then coming to Philly. It's been a little inconsistent for him thus far, and he's been rumored to be in trade talks and so on and so forth. But at the same time, individually, there's still some skill in his game. He can play a top nine role. He can play a two-way game, and he's very reliable as not necessarily a two-way winger, but a guy who can produce offensively when needed, and is very contributive when he's able to generate a lot in terms of goal scoring around the crease and also the playmaking ability to find seams, ability to manipulate pressure. And he's done a better job of that. And then Travis Konechny looked really good throughout this game as well. I thought Konechny, he's always very physical. He's always very competitive. Always has that hyper speed element to his game. I don't know how else to phrase that, but with Konechny, he is a guy that stands out in that sense because he can control play not only with his compete level but also his actual skill. He's really skilled and he's really competitive, and those two can make for a dangerous combo because that tenacity, that competitiveness can allow him to win pucks, and at the same time, his individual skill can allow him to escape the pressure and be able to maneuver away from defensemen. So sometimes you see players who have one or the other. Sometimes you see players who have both, and with connecting, he has both. He has that compete, he has that inner drive, and he has that ability to score and also make plays, which is rare to find because sometimes you see players slightly drift away, drift off from the play. But I feel like in large part it has to do with Tortorella's style of system and how he wants his team to play. He wants every player to be competitive and be defensively reliable and also forecheck and be tenacious. So I feel like Konechny's that guy that really fits that system really well, and just a guy who plays engaged all over the board. And Travis Sanheim also looked really good in this game, has stood out in multiple games and multiple viewings when I've watched him. And I just want to see a little bit more out of him, especially offensively. And with Sanheim, a guy who stands out in transition, he stands out in his outlets. He isn't the flashiest of puck carriers, but he gets the job done because of his ability to outlet, move pucks, generate breakouts with control and pace. And he can be reliable in transition. Defensively has continued to get better over the course of time, and a guy who can shut down guys not only with his size and his range and his ability to close gaps with his stick from range, but a guy who can really control space with his height. And this goes for his play on the puck as well. He has a lanky like ability to be able to control space and be able to maneuver around opponents inside the neutral zone, which allows him to transition pucks a little bit easier. He's also got fluid feet. He plays on top of the ice a lot. So he's controlling speed, he's controlling pace, and he's able to control a lot of different sequences to be able to take advantage in transition and off the rush as well.